The Grand Chamber was the largest room Ambassador Hannah Kim had ever seen. It stretched for nearly a kilometer in every direction. It's filled with floating platforms where thousands of alien diplomats sat and watched. The ceiling showed the dying red star outside, casting everything in blood-colored light. Hannah stood at the center of the chamber, alone on a small platform. Her delegation of 12 humans sat behind her, silent and still. Around them, representatives from over 300 species whispered and pointed. Some laughed. Others looked at the humans the way someone might look at insects. 3 years. For 3 years, humanity had come to this station called Eternity's Reach. For 3 years. They had begged and negotiated and compromised. And for 3 years, the Galactic Council had demanded more. High Arbiter Toril floated down from his elevated platform. He was ancient, his gray skin covered in ceremonial markings that showed his 5,000 years of life. His 4 eyes looked at Hannah with something between boredom and contempt. "We have been patient with your species," Toril said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "When your colony ships entered space that belonged to the Vel Dominion, we could have destroyed Earth. We chose mercy." Hannah said nothing. Her face showed no emotion. "When your people refused to leave those worlds, the Vel were forced to act," where Darrell gestured toward another platform where Counselor Ven sat watching. Vin was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes like black holes. He smiled at Hannah. It was not a kind smile. "Colony 7 was unfortunate," Toril continued, "but necessary. Your species must learn its place." Colony 7. The words hit Hannah like a physical blow, but she did not let it show. She remembered the videos. The Vel warships appearing without warning. The desperate calls for help. The screams of 2.3 million men, women, and children as plasma fire rained from the sky. The youngest victim had been 3 months old. Her name was Su Min. "Today, we offer you final terms," Toril said. He raised a tablet and began to read. "Humanity will surrender its military fleet. Humanity will abandon 12 colony worlds. Humanity will submit to protective oversight by the Council for a period of no less than 500 years. In exchange, Earth will be allowed to exist." The chamber erupted in approval. Alien diplomats cheered and applauded. This was what they had wanted. This was the primitive species finally accepting its place at the bottom. Toril looked at Hannah. "Do you accept these terms, Ambassador?" The chamber fell silent. Thousands of eyes watched the small human woman standing alone in that vast space. Hannah thought about her daughter, who had died on Colony 7. She thought about the message she had received that morning from Admiral Tae Woo. She thought about the 3 years of humiliation, of begging for justice that never came, of watching the galaxy laugh at human suffering. She smiled. Counselor Ven leaned forward in his seat. Something about that smile made him uncomfortable. "The people of Earth have considered your terms very carefully," Hannah said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We understand what you are offering. We understand what you expect from us." She paused and looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien eyes as she could. "We reject every single one of your demands." The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. High Arbiter Toril stared at her. "I do not think you understand your situation, Ambassador. You have no choice. Your fleet is small. Your technology is primitive. You cannot win a war against the Council." "You are correct," Hannah said. "We cannot win a war against the entire Council. That is why we spent the last 3 years identifying exactly which species were responsible for Colony 7. The Vel who pulled the trigger. The Council members who voted to call it justified. The merchants who sold them the weapons." She reached up and removed the small translation device from behind her ear. She held it in her hand for a moment, looking at it. "We came here today not to negotiate. We came to look into the eyes of those who murdered our children." She dropped the device and crushed it under her foot. "And to tell you this, humanity remembers Colony 7. We remember every name, every face, every child who burned." She turned and looked directly at Counselor Ven. "And humanity does not forgive." The human delegation rose as one. 12 men and women in simple black uniforms, their faces hard as stone. They walked toward the exit without looking back. Counselor Venn laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. Theatrical nonsense. Let them go. Let them return to their little planet and wait for death. But not everyone was laughing. Observer Kira was young for a council member, barely 800 years old. She had studied humans for decades, fascinated by their strange species. Now she watched them leave. She felt something she had never felt before. Fear. She checked her display screen and felt the fear grow stronger. The human ships that had been docked at the station were gone. Not leaving? Gone. Vanished without a trace, without any sensor detecting their departure. Arbiter, she said quietly. Something is wrong. Toril ignored her. He was too busy accepting congratulations from other council members. Already planning the invasion of Earth, Kira looked back at the door where the humans had disappeared. She pulled up old records, ancient files from when humanity first made contact with the galaxy. She read about their history, their wars, their ability to hold grudges for generations. Read about something called the long game, a human concept of waiting years or decades for revenge, and she understood something that Toril and Venn and all the others did not. The humans had not lost today. They had not surrendered or given up. They had spent 3 years preparing for this exact moment. The peace talks had never been real. Ambassador. Hannah Kim walked through the corridors of the station toward her shuttle. Lieutenant Mina Kao fell into step beside her. The fleet is in position, Ambassador, Mina said quietly. Admiral Tae Woo confirms Operation Silent Thunder is ready. Hannah nodded. She thought about her daughter one more time. Then she pushed the memory aside. There would be time for grief later. Now was the time for something else. Send the signal, she said. Tell the Admiral that humanity is done talking. Behind them, the Grand Chamber continued to celebrate. The aliens laughed and congratulated each other on their victory over the primitive humans. They had no idea that the war had already begun, and they had no idea that they had already lost. 2 weeks passed after the humans walked out of the Grand Chamber. The Galactic Council spent those weeks laughing. Fleet Commander Knox stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign Will, and watched his armada assemble. 4,000 warships from 12 different species, gathering in formation like a great metal cloud. It was the largest military force assembled in 3,000 years. Knox was a warrior from the Koroth species, bred for combat since birth. His body was covered in thick armor plates, and his forearms could crush stone. He had fought in 17 wars and never lost a single battle. This would not be a battle. This would be an execution. The fleet is ready, Commander, his second officer reported. All ships report weapons charged and crews prepared. Knox nodded slowly. Good. We move toward Earth in 6 hours. I want to arrive at the human homeworld within the week. He looked at the display showing human space. It was a small section of the galaxy, barely worth noticing. A few dozen colony worlds, 100 space stations. One small fleet of maybe 200 ships. Nothing that could stand against his armada, but something bothered him. Something he could not name. On the Vel homeworld. Counselor Venn sat in his private chamber and waited for reports from his spy network. The Vel had the best intelligence service in the galaxy. Their agents were everywhere, watching everything. Nothing happened in known space without Venn knowing about it until now. Report, he said to the agent standing before him. The agent was shaking. Counselor, we have lost contact with all assets in human space. Venn leaned forward. All of them. Yes, Counselor. Every spy satellite, every hidden probe, every agent on human worlds, they have all gone silent. At the same time, 2 weeks ago. Venn stood up slowly. That is not possible. We have thousands of assets in human territory. I know, Counselor. They are all gone. We sent scout ships to investigate. None of them returned. Venn walked to his window and looked out at the stars. For the first time in his very long life, he felt a cold sensation in his chest. He did not recognize it at first. It was fear. Back on Eternity's Reach, observer Kira worked alone in the archives. She had spent 2 weeks studying everything about humanity. Their history, their wars, their psychology. What she found terrified her. Humans were not like other species. They did not fight for territory, or resources, or honor. They fought for revenge. They could hold hatred in their hearts for generations. Passing it from parent to child like a sacred flame, she read about human conflicts that lasted for centuries. She read about warriors who walked thousands of kilometers just to kill one enemy. She read about a concept called total war, where humans did not stop fighting until their enemy was completely destroyed. And she read about something called guerrilla warfare, the art of hiding, the art of waiting, the art of striking from shadows and disappearing before the enemy could respond. She requested an emergency meeting with High Arbiter Toril. Toril received her in his private quarters, clearly annoyed at the interruption. What is so important, observer? Kira placed her research on his desk. Arbiter, I believe we have made a terrible mistake. The humans are not hiding because they are afraid. They are hiding because they are preparing. Adora laughed. Preparing for what? They have 200 ships. We have 4,000. Arbiter in human history. Smaller forces have defeated larger ones many times. They use tactics that other species consider dishonorable. Ambushes, traps, attacks on supply lines. They do not fight the way we expect. Toril waved his hand dismissively. They are primitives. They have had spaceflight for barely 300 years. We have had it for millions. They cannot surprise us. Kira tried again. Their space has gone completely dark. No signals. No movement. Nothing. Does that not concern you? It tells me they are cowering in fear, waiting for death. Toril stood up, ending the meeting. Return to your studies, observer. Leave military matters to those who understand them. Kira left his quarters feeling sick. She knew she was right. She knew disaster was coming, and she knew no one would listen. Deep in space, far from any star or planet, Admiral Tae Woo stood in the command center of a station that did not officially exist. The station was built inside an asteroid, completely invisible to sensors. Around it, hidden in the darkness between stars, 3,000 human warships waited in silence. Not 200. 3,000. For 3 years, while diplomats talked and the galaxy laughed, humanity had built secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields, factories buried deep in moons, research stations floating in the void where no one thought to look. Dr. Una Park stood beside the Admiral, watching the holographic display that showed the enemy armada assembling. They are preparing to move, she said. 4,000 ships. They will arrive at Earth in approximately 8 days. Tae Woo nodded slowly. He was an old man, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the military for 50 years. He had hoped to retire in peace. Colony 7 had changed everything. Is Operation Silent Thunder ready? He asked. Una smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. The stealth platforms are in position throughout the Sol system. The warp disruption network is online. The kinetic accelerators are charged. We are ready, Admiral. Tae Woo looked at the display for a long moment. 4,000 enemy ships. Millions of alien soldiers. The greatest military force in galactic history, coming to destroy Earth, coming to enslave humanity, coming to finish what they started at Colony 7. Let them come, he said quietly. Let them enter our space. Let them think they have already won. He turned to his communications officer. Send the signal to all ships. Maintain absolute silence. Do not move. Do not transmit. Wait for my command. On the display, the enemy armada began to move toward human space. Tae Woo watched them come, and he thought about the 2.3 million people who died on Colony 7. He thought about the children who burned. He thought about the galaxy that had laughed at human suffering. You wanted to teach us our place, he whispered. You are about to learn yours? The trap was set. The enemy was walking into it, and humanity was done being the victim. Fleet Commander Knox watched Earth grow larger on his display screen. The blue and green planet looked peaceful, beautiful even. It was hard to believe that such a small world had caused so much trouble. His armada had traveled through human space for 8 days without seeing a single enemy ship. The silence was strange, but Knox had decided it meant the humans were hiding on their homeworld, waiting for death. "All ships report ready, Commander," his officer said. "We are entering the Sol system now." Knox stood tall on his bridge. This moment would be remembered forever. The day the Galactic Council crushed the human rebellion. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Destroy their orbital defenses first. Then we will deal with the planet." The armada spread out, 4,000 ships moving toward Earth in perfect formation. Their weapons charged. Their crews prepared for easy victory. Then the stars began to move. Lieutenant Minako sat at her station aboard the human flagship Defiance, watching enemy communications. For 8 days, she had listened to the aliens laugh and boast about how icily they would destroy humanity. Now she'd listened to them scream. "Admiral," she said, her voice calm despite everything, "the enemy fleet has entered the kill zone. All ships are within range of the disruption network." Admiral Tae-woo nodded once. "Activate the network." No one leaves. Across the Sol system, hidden platforms came to life. They sent out invisible waves that disrupted faster than light travel. Any ship that tried to escape would find its engines useless. The trap was closed. "Commander," Knox felt his ship shake and heard alarms begin to scream. His navigation officer turned to him with terror in his eyes. "Commander, our warp drive is offline. We cannot escape." "What?" Knox rushed to the display. "That is impossible. Scan for the source." "I cannot find it, Commander. The signal is coming from everywhere." Before Knox could respond, space itself seemed to tear open around his fleet. Human ships appeared from nothing. Not 200. Not 500. Thousands of them materializing from the darkness like ghosts. They had been hiding in the asteroid belt behind moons, the empty spaces between planets, waiting. Knox stared at the display in disbelief. "How many ships?" His officer's voice shook. "Over 3,000, Commander. They outnumber us." Captain Seok Jin stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the enemy fleet panic. He had waited 3 years for this moment. 3 years of planning. 3 years of building. 3 years of remembering. His younger sister had died on Colony 7. She was 22 years old. She had been a teacher at the colony school. "All ships," he said into his communicator. "This is Captain Seok Jin. Today we answer for Colony 7. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you harm our people. Attack." The human fleet surged forward. But the ships were only part of humanity's plan. Dr. Una Park had spent 10 years designing the weapons. Platforms hidden throughout the solar system. They were invisible to sensors, floating in the void like silent predators. Each one carried kinetic accelerators. Weapons that fired metal slugs at 3% of the speed of light. Nothing could stop them. Nothing could see them coming. "Fire all platforms," Admiral Tae-woo ordered. Across the solar system, the platforms activated. Hundreds of invisible projectiles launched toward the enemy fleet. They moved too fast to dodge. Too fast to shoot down. Too fast to even see. The first wave hit the rear of the alien armada. Ships simply exploded, torn apart by impacts that released more energy than nuclear bombs. In seconds, 200 enemy vessels became clouds of debris. Commander Knox watched his fleet dying around him. Ships vanished from his display faster than he could count. His officers screamed reports of damage and death, but he could barely hear them over the chaos. "Return fire," he shouted. All ships returned fire. But fire at what? The human ships were everywhere, striking and vanishing, never staying still long enough to target. And the kinetic weapons came from nowhere. Invisible death that struck without warning. A Vel cruiser exploded beside the Sovereign Will. Then another. Then 3 more. Knox's officer grabbed his arm. "Commander, we have to retreat." "We cannot retreat. The warp drives are disabled. Then we are going to die here. Knox looked at his display. Half his fleet was already gone. The other half was scattered and burning. Human ships moved through the wreckage like hunters, finishing off damaged vessels without mercy. He had walked into a trap. A perfect trap. Designed by a species he had called primitive, Captain Seok Jin flew the Defiance directly toward the Vel command ship. It was one of the largest vessels in the enemy fleet, covered in weapons and armor. It was also the ship that had led the attack on Colony 7. "Captain," his pilot said, "that ship has heavy shielding. Our weapons may not penetrate. Then we will get closer." He opened a channel that the entire enemy fleet could hear. "This is Captain Seok Jin of the Earth vessel Defiance. I am coming for the Vel command ship. This is for Colony 7. This is for my sister. This is for every human being you murdered." He pushed the engines to maximum and charged directly at the enemy. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the greatest armada in galactic history was nothing but debris floating in space. "Commander." Knox sat alone on the bridge of his dying ship. The sovereign will was broken, its engines destroyed, its crew dead or dying. Through the cracked view screen, he could see human ships moving through the wreckage, rescuing survivors from some species while ignoring others. His communications officer managed to send one final message to the Galactic Council before the power failed completely. "They were never prey," Knox said, his voice weak and tired. "We walked into the den of apex predators. Tell the Council, warn them. The humans are coming, and nothing will stop them now." The transmission ended. Admiral Tae Woo stood in his command center and watched the final enemy ships surrender. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but he did not celebrate. He looked at the display showing thousands of destroyed vessels, each one containing hundreds or thousands of alien soldiers. So much death, so much destruction. Admiral Minako said softly, "Enemy losses are approximately 3,800 ships. Human losses are 247 ships." Tae-woo nodded slowly. A complete victory. The kind of victory that would be remembered for centuries. But victory did not bring back Colony 7. Victory did not bring back the 2.3 million dead. Victory did not fill the empty place in his heart where hope used to live. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he said finally. "Tell them their fleet is destroyed. Tell them humanity is coming. And tell them we have not forgotten what they did to our children." Stars tell them the war has just begun. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never known silence like this. "Hi, Arbiter." Toril stood at the center of the room, staring at the holographic display that showed nothing but debris where his armada had been. 4,000 ships. Millions of soldiers. The greatest military force in 3,000 years? Gone. All of it. Gone in 6 hours. Around him, diplomats from 300 species sat in shocked silence. Some were crying. Others were praying to gods that suddenly seemed very far away. A few were already calculating how quickly they could surrender to humanity. "This is not possible," Toril whispered. "They are primitives. They had 200 ships." Counselor Venn stood up from his platform. His blue face was pale, his black eyes wide with fear. "We must respond. We must gather another fleet." "With what?" Another counselor shouted. "The humans destroyed 70% of our combined military in one battle. We have nothing left." The chamber exploded into chaos. Diplomats screamed at each other, blaming their neighbors for the disaster. Ancient alliances crumbled in minutes. Species that had worked together for thousands of years suddenly became enemies. Observer Kira watched it all from her platform. She had tried to warn them. She had begged them to listen. Now it was too late. Her communicator buzzed. She looked at the message and felt her blood run cold. Human ships had been detected at the border of Council space. Not attacking. Just waiting, the message came from Admiral Tae-woo himself. "You're coming," it said. "You have one chance to surrender. There will not be a second." 3 days later, the first Council species surrendered. The Tauran, a peaceful trading civilization, sent a message to the human fleet begging for mercy. They had voted against the Colony 7 resolution. They had tried to help humanity during the peace talks. Admiral Taewoo accepted their surrender. He was not interested in punishing the innocent. 2 more species surrendered within the week. Then 5 more. Then 12. The Galactic Council was falling apart. Councillor Ven refused to surrender. The Vel Dominion had ruled space for 50,000 years. They had never lost a war. They had never bowed to any species. "We will fight," Ven declared to his people. "We will gather every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We will defend our homeworld to the last breath." He assembled what remained of the Vel fleet. 800 warships, all that survived the disaster at Sol. He fortified the defenses around his homeworld. He prepared his people for total war. And then the humans arrived, Ambassador. Hannah Kim broadcast a message to the Vel Dominion 1 hour before the attack. Her face was calm. Her voice was steady. But her eyes burned with cold fire. "People of the Vel Dominion, 3 years ago, your warships attacked our Colony 7 without warning. You killed 2.3 million of our people, men, women, and children, farmers and teachers and doctors. You burned them alive and called it justice." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "We offered peace. Your council rejected us. We asked for justice. Your council laughed at us. Now we are here, not to negotiate, not to compromise, but to deliver judgment. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. Your military leaders will face trial for their crimes. Your people will pay reparations to the families of Colony 7. These terms are not negotiable. If you refuse, we will destroy your fleet, dismantle your defenses, and reduce your military power to nothing. We will not harm your civilians. We are not like you. But your ability to threaten humanity will end today, one way or another. You have 1 hour. Use it wisely." Councillor Ven watched the message in his command center. His officers looked at him, waiting for orders. "We do not surrender," Ven said. "We are Vel. We have ruled the stars for 50,000 years. These humans are nothing but animals. We will crush them." He was wrong. The human fleet entered Vel's space exactly 1 hour later. 3,000 ships against 800. But numbers were only part of the story. The Vel fought bravely. Their warriors had centuries of experience. Their weapons were powerful. Their defenses were strong. None of it mattered. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not form neat lines or follow predictable patterns. They struck from every direction at once, overwhelming sensors and targeting systems. They used weapons the Vel had never seen, attacking mines and machines as well as ships. Captain Seok Jin led the assault on the Vel orbital defense platforms. His pilots flew through storms of enemy fire, too fast and too unpredictable to hit. They destroyed the platforms one by one, opening a path to the planet below. The Vel fleet lasted for hours. When it ended, every military vessel was destroyed or disabled. The planet's defenses were gone. The Vel Dominion lay open to invasion, but the invasion never came. Instead, Admiral Taewoo broadcast a message to every screen on the Vel homeworld. 2.3 million. That is the number you took from us. We could take that number from you. We could burn your cities. We could kill your children. We could do to you exactly what you did to Colony 7. His face was hard, but his eyes showed something like sadness. We choose not to. We are not here for revenge. We are here to make sure you can never harm us again. Your fleet is gone. Your weapons are gone. Your empire is gone, but your people will survive. Remember this day. Remember that humanity had the power to destroy you and chose mercy. Remember that we are not like you. And remember that if you ever threaten our people again, we will not be merciful a second time. Councillor Ven was captured 3 days later. Hiding in a bunker beneath his capital city, he would stand trial for war crimes. He would spend the rest of his life in prison, watching the empire he helped build crumble to dust. Ambassador. Kim returned to the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council 1 month after the Vel surrender. But this time, she did not stand alone on a small platform. She stood at the center of the room. flanked by Admiral Tae-woo and Captain Seok-jin. Human soldiers lined the walls. Human ships orbited the station. High Arbiter Toril was gone, removed by his own people. Observer Kira stood in his place, the first leader who had treated humanity with respect. The Galactic Council will continue to exist, Hannah announced. But humanity will hold a permanent seat. We will have veto power over any military action. And the Council will publicly acknowledge what was done to Colony 7. No one argued. No one protested. The species that had laughed at humanity 3 years ago now sat in silence, afraid to meet human eyes. Hannah looked around the chamber. She thought about the long road that had led here. The years of humiliation. The deaths of millions. The war that should never have been necessary. We did not want this war, she said quietly. We wanted peace. We wanted justice. You gave us neither, so we took what we needed. She turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she stopped and looked back. Learn from this. We have. The chamber remained silent long after she was gone. 1 year had passed since the war ended. Admiral Pace, who stood alone on a hill overlooking the memorial of Colony 7, below him. 2.3 million white stones stretched toward the horizon, one for every person who had died. In the center stood a single tree, grown from seeds that had survived the attack. He came here every month. Sometimes he spoke to the dead. Sometimes he just stood in silence, remembering today. He was not alone. Ambassador Hannah Kim walked up the hill to stand beside him. She was dressed in simple clothes, not the formal uniform she wore in the council chambers. She looked older than she had a year ago. The war had aged them all. I thought I might find you here, she said softly. Tae-woo nodded, but did not speak. His eyes were fixed on a particular stone near the edge of the memorial. It bore the name of his granddaughter, who had been 8 years old when the Vel came. The council session went well, Hannah said. Observer Kira has officially taken over as High Arbiter. She has already started reforms. Good, his voice was rough with old grief. She is a good leader. Fair. Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question she had wanted to ask for a year. Do you regret it? The war. The deaths. All those alien soldiers who will never go home? Tae-woo was silent for a long time. Wind moved through the memorial, making a soft sound like distant voices. I do what I had to do, he finally said. I do not regret protecting our people. I do not regret making sure Colony 7 can never happen again. Paused. But I think about them. The enemy soldiers. Most of them were just following orders. Most of them did not choose to attack us. He turned to look at her. His eyes were tired. A general should never enjoy war. A general should carry the weight of every life he takes. If I stopped feeling that weight, I would not deserve to lead. Hannah nodded. She understood. She carried her own weight, her own memories. The council wants to give you a medal, she said. The highest honor they can offer. They want to celebrate you as a hero. Tae-woo shook his head slowly. Heroes do not win wars. Survivors do? I am not a hero. I am just an old man who did terrible things to protect his people. He looked back at the memorial. Give the medal to them. They are the ones who paid the price. 300 light years away, Captain Seok-jin stood on the bridge of a new ship. The vessel was called the New Dawn, and it was the first human ship designed for exploration rather than war. It carried no heavy weapons, no military secrets. It carried scientists and diplomats, teachers and artists. It carried the names of everyone who died on Colony 7, etched into its hull in letters so small they covered the entire surface of the ship. Ness Uk Gin looked at the stars through the view screen. For 3 years, those stars had been his enemies. Now they were his destination. Dr. Unipark stood beside him, her tablet full of research data. She had retired from military work after the war. Now she led the scientific expedition that would take the New Dawn beyond the borders of known space. We are ready, Captain, she said. All systems are online. The crew is prepared. Seok-jin nodded slowly. He thought about his sister, the teacher who had died on Colony 7. She had always dreamed of exploring the stars. She had always believed that humanity's future was not in war, but in discovery. She would have loved this, he said quietly. Yuna understood without asking who he meant. Then let us do it for her. Eok Jin straightened his shoulders and gave the order. All ahead full. Take us into the unknown. The new dawn leaped forward into the darkness between galaxies, carrying humanity's hopes toward new horizons. On the station Eternity's Reach, Observer Kira addressed the rebuilt Galactic Council. The chamber looked different now. The platform where humanity's delegation had once sat alone was now at the center, equal to all others. Human representatives sat among alien diplomats, no longer outsiders, but partners. 1 year ago, this council made a terrible mistake, Kira said. We allowed fear and arrogance to blind us. We treated a young species as enemies when they wanted to be friends. We laughed at their pain and ignored their cries for justice. She paused and looked around the chamber. We cannot undo what was done. We cannot bring back the 2.3 million who died on Colony 7. We cannot erase the war or the deaths that followed, but we can learn. We can change. We can build something better, she gestured toward the human delegation. Humanity has shown us something we forgot long ago. They showed us that strength is not just in weapons and ships. Strength is in memory. Strength is in unity. Strength is in refusing to accept injustice, even when the whole galaxy stands against you. Let us remember this lesson. Let us build a council that treats all species with dignity. Let us create a future where no one has to suffer what Colony 7 suffered. The chamber was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. It grew until the entire council was standing, humans and aliens together, honoring not victory, but hope. In a refugee camp on the edge of what had been the Vel Dominion, a young Vel child sat watching the stars. Her name was Tira, and she was 10 years old. Her father had been a soldier who died in the battle for their homeworld. Her mother worked in the camp, trying to rebuild their shattered lives. Observer Kira visited the camp that day as part of her efforts to help rebuild the fallen Dominion. She walked among the refugees, listening to their stories. Offering what comfort she could, Teray approached her, eyes wide with curiosity and a little fear. High Arbiter. The child said, "Why are the humans so frightening? They defeated our entire empire. They could have destroyed us all. Why didn't they?" Kira knelt down to look into the child's eyes. She thought about everything she had learned about humanity over the years. Their history, their wars, their strange combination of violence and compassion, because they are not like us, she said finally. They do not fight for power or territory. They do not conquer for glory. They fight to protect their people. They fight because someone hurt them, and they refuse to be hurt again. She looked up at the stars. That is why they are frightening, little one. Not because they are cruel or evil, but because they will never give up. They will never forget. They will never stop protecting their own. Tira thought about this for a moment. So they are not monsters? Kira smiled sadly. No, they are something much more dangerous. They are survivors, and survivors are very hard to defeat. Back on Earth, Ambassador Hannah Kim stood in her apartment. Looking at a photograph, it showed a young woman with bright eyes and a warm smile. Her daughter, who had been a doctor on Colony 7, who had stayed behind to help the wounded when the evacuation began, who had died trying to save others. Hannah touched the photograph gently. "We did it," she whispered. "We made them pay for what they did to you. We made sure it can never happen again." She set the photograph down and walked to her window. Outside, the city stretched toward the horizon, full of lights and life. Children played in the streets. Families sat down to dinner. People went about their lives in peace. This was what the war had been for. Not revenge. Not power. Just the simple right to exist without fear. Her communicator buzzed. A message from the council. More work to be done. More negotiations. More building. Hannah took one last look at the photograph. Then she straightened her shoulders and went back to work. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. and the people of Colony 7 could finally rest in peace. The war was over. But humanity's story was just beginning.